So another phylum of invertebrates are called mollusks. And you're probably familiar with these because some of these you may have eaten before. They have soft bodies. It's called the mantle. And many of them have shells. Can you guess what these are? If I'm saying you've eaten them before, Destiny?
Clams.
Yeah, clams, mussels, oysters, snails. Those are examples of mollusks. Mollusks, most have shells, but some do not. And one you've probably seen in your backyard is a slug. Slug's a type of mollusk. It doesn't have a shell. And slugs they usually live in moist areas, and they feed on leaves and stuff. You might find them in the morning. You go outside, and they're on leaves or looking for some sort of food. They grow pretty big, like a banana slug could be, a foot long or so, really big. That's one type of mollusk. They have this muscular part used for movement. It's called the foot. They sometimes have eyes out on these stalks, like this snail does, this slug does. Octopus, squid, they're also mollusks. These are some of them. Octopus are some of the most advanced of the invertebrates. They have a well-developed brain. They have amazing ability to camouflage themselves, and we'll see some of that in a video at the end of class today. So octopus and squid are mollusks. Clams, oysters, mussels, these are things called bivalves, meaning two shells. And what bivalves, most of them are filter feeders. They suck water in through a part called the siphon, filter out little bits of food, and then squeeze the excess water out. How many people like clams, to eat clams? Okay, so yeah, people eat them oftentimes. The part you eat is basically the whole body of the clam. It's digestive system, reproductive system. It's all the different parts are contained within that little section there in the clam. After the animal dies, eventually the shell remains. And when you go to the ocean and you're looking around on the shore, you find shells. What you're finding are little bits of these mollusk shells, because there's a lot of mollusks living in the ocean, and as they die, their shells take a long time to break down. That's
Would a mollusk be shrimp?
No, we'll get to those in a minute. That's a different group. Jasmine?
A lobster is a mollusk, isn't it?
No, that's another, that goes with the shrimp. So yeah, this is a snail. Snails have a shell. And the other thing is the shell of these mollusks, it's part of their body. Sometimes people get confused. They think like this snail can crawl into the shell and then crawl out. Or that the clam can go into and out of the shell. It can't. It's part of its body. It makes that shell and it's attached to it. This is an animal called a nautilus. It grows with this sort of corkscrew shell and swims through the water. This is a conch.
How does this swim if it's got like a
Some of them swim through like jet propulsion, like clams, for example, squeeze water out, and that sort of moves them along, kind of like the jellyfish that we saw. Some of these clams like will burrow into the sand. Like sometimes you might find them in the ocean, and you might uncover them, and then they dig their way back into the soil, into the sand. They're filtering food out of that water. Some of them swim through the water. It just depends on one. This is conch. They're also used as food. Very common like the Caribbean and places like that, where they're coastal areas where it's a good source of food for people. And then the last group that we'll talk about today are arthropods. Do you remember what this root means? Pod, pseudopod, podiatrist. Tyler? What? Isaiah?
feet?
Yeah, it means foot. The word arthropod means jointed feet, because arthropods have a hard exoskeleton that has these joints in it, these boundaries between two plates that allow for movement. Arthropods have segmented bodies that's broken up into sections. They have bilateral symmetry, and they have this hard covering. It's called their exoskeleton. It means outside skeleton. And it's made of a non-living protein material. And it's a protective layer. It helps protect them, gives their body structure, makes it more difficult sometimes for predators to eat them. And we talked earlier that the vast majority, 95% of all animals are invertebrates. Well, of those, 75% of all animals are in this group, arthropods. Includes a lot of things, a lot of different animals. This is an example. This is what? Crab. And if you look at this crab, it has its exoskeleton, it's red. But these white areas between it, those are the joints between these plates of its exoskeleton that allow it to bend its legs at those areas. It's kind of like a suit of armor, right? A suit of armor, it's not just like two tubes of metal that you have to walk around like this and to move. It has joints at the elbows and at the knees and at the hips so that those parts can move but still give protection. Well, it's similar in these arthropods. There's these joints allow for the two plates to move near each other. So, before we get to that, this exoskeleton is helpful because it's protective, but at the same time, it doesn't grow. Once it forms, it basically stays that size and shape. So it makes it difficult for these arthropods to grow larger. What do you think they have to do if they're going to grow larger and they have this exoskeleton? They have to shed it. They have to come out of that exoskeleton every once in a while, grow bigger, and then form a new, larger exoskeleton. You know, I have up here, if you've ever seen this little exoskeleton from a beetle. You probably have seen these around your house maybe, like attached to a fence or a tree or like a swing set or something. What happens is when these beetles it's time for them to grow larger, what they do is they go and they grasp onto some surface, like a fence or usually wood, so they can grab it. And then their exoskeleton on the back sort of splits in half, and the insect, the beetle, the living parts, come out of the back of it. Okay? And at that time, it's soft, and it can then grow larger. And once it's grown to a larger size, a new exoskeleton forms that's larger. So you see these once in a while.
Do you know where Tyler Horse is?
What's that?
I came here. Oh, there he is.
You guys staying or going?
Mr. Rockley told us to go down. I just saw him.
To go back down there?
Yeah.
Okay. So this exoskeleton will grow back again and harden, and then the arthropod is larger. And it may repeat that several times until it reaches its full size. I'll show you a video of this in a minute. It's kind of cool, neat to watch. Within the arthropod phylum, there's actually 5 classes of arthropods. One class are the arachnids. What does that include? Spiders, ticks, mites, things like that. Those are things with 8 legs. Another group are insects. Like what? What's an insect? Butterfly, a bee, an ant, grasshopper, ladybug. All those things are insects. That's a very, very large group. How many legs do they have? 6. Yes, all insects. Another group are crustaceans. What are some crustaceans? Shrimp, lobster, crabs, crayfish. Yep. They have 10 legs. Yep. And then there's 2 smaller groups, centipedes and millipedes. And probably what you've heard is incorrect, because what have you heard about the number of legs?
8.
Centipedes?
I know the answer because it's
What?
isn't it? Cent is 100.
Yes, and people say that centipedes have 100 legs and millipedes have 1,000. That's actually not true. Centipedes have 1 pair of legs on each of their body sections, and they have a lot of body sections. Millipedes have 2 pairs, but there's not a specific number of legs that they have. So those are the 5 groups of arthropods.
So they could have like, so
What's
they
that?
could have like as many body sections as they.
Yeah, they have a whole bunch. Like I have, if you are looking at an aquarium, there's the leftover exoskeleton of a giant millipede. If you look closely, each body section has 2 pairs of legs on it. But,
Does the centipede, does each one have different numbers of legs? Or
no, each one has 1 leg on each side, each segment.
So,
All the done.
This next video I'm going to show you in a minute is a video of a crab going through the molting process. It's kind of neat to watch. When it becomes time for it to grow larger, what happens is they basically pull out of their exoskeleton, kind of like if you were to take off a sweater and you slide out the back of it so that it doesn't turn inside out. It kind of comes out like that, or taking a glove off. This video is a time-lapse video, and so it's sped up a little bit. It takes a little while for this to happen, but what you're going to see is this crab is in an aquarium, and it's moving around for a little while. You can see it eats little bits of food, and its pinchers are picking little tiny bits of food and eating them and so forth. But you're going to see after a little bit of time, it starts to slow down and become still. And you can see around the back, this area here is where it's going to break out of this exoskeleton, sort of pull back behind it and leave its leftover exoskeleton behind. So this is the new part. This is the soft tissue that is going to come out of that exoskeleton.
And just grow it back.
Yeah, and then a new exoskeleton would grow back over it after it grows a little bit larger. So you see it's coming out now.
Whoa. Didn't need to see all that.
Whoa. Oh, that's sick.
Yeah, so it took that exoskeleton off just like a jacket or something, pulled out behind from the back of it. At this point, its tissue is soft and it would be vulnerable. There would be a time when if a predator was going to eat it, it would be easy to eat because it has no protective shell.
So you could like touch it and it'd be like
Yeah, it'd be soft.
fleshy?
Yep. You know, if you ever ate crab legs before, this is the part you're eating. You know, you pull that crab meat out, that's the inside. You have to break open that exoskeleton to get the
I know,
meat
so
out.
that's how
Now
soft
that,
crab
why,
legs.
that's what they should do.
Crab
They
leg
should,
is good.
Take it out like that,
Yeah.
Yeah.
so you don't have to
So
do
you
the
don't
work.
have to do the work,
They
yeah.
should wait till
Could
it
be
dies.
easy, yeah.
Or,
There is, you know, there are
wait
something
till-
called soft shell crab. You ever heard of that?
Yeah.
I think those are crabs that are taken after they've molted. I have to check that out a little more. All right, just two more slides here I want to talk about. Metamorphosis. So metamorphosis is a change in the body structure of an animal. And we've been talking, when we were talking about these crabs and insects coming out of their exoskeleton, we were talking about what's called incomplete metamorphosis. In incomplete metamorphosis, the organism sheds its exoskeleton, grows larger, and then forms a new exoskeleton. And it may do that several times until it's a fully grown adult. So here you have an example. The egg hatches into a small, just sort of a smaller version of the adult. It's called the nymph stage. And then it will molt, grow larger, and it's the next stage of the nymph. And then again until it eventually reaches adult size. Okay? When it sheds its exoskeleton, the term for that is called molting. But each step, it just basically looks like a bigger version of the previous one. But there are some species that go through a different type of metamorphosis that we call complete metamorphosis. In complete metamorphosis, the body of the organism seems to completely change. And a good example is a butterfly. You know, an egg hatches into a caterpillar, which is actually the larval stage. And then eventually as it matures, it will form the pupa stage. And then what emerges from the pupa is the adult, which looks quite different from the larval stage. It looks like a whole nother animal, but it's actually the same creature. It's just metamorphized into a new form. You know, lots of arthropods do this. Butterflies and caterpillars, for example, or flies. And what's the larva of a fly called? A maggot is this stage of a fly. Mosquitoes do this in the water. Mosquito larvae live in ponds and so forth, and then as they emerge, they are fully developed mosquitoes. So lots of different types of animals go through this process of metamorphosis.
Are we done?
A little arthropod humor for you.
I can't see
Really,
it.
Mr.
Oh, gee, Mom, not my baby photos again. He's a butterfly. Here's when he was a larva. Here's when he was a pupa. Not getting a lot of laughs out of that one today. I thought it was
That's so
That's
funny.
not even funny.
It is funny because he's a larva and a
Tyler,
pupa.
you know
You know, when your parents show people your baby
Yeah.
pictures, you're embarrassed. I guess If I have to explain it, it's not that
Science
bad.
Ha ha ha. I laughed.
Thanks, Destiny.
You're welcome.